We're back. This is Renovate and Build with Jim and Sandra, powered by Fair Trade Works.
Oh, it's been such a great summer. I'm trying to forget the rain. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on CIL 650. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Jim, and good morning to you, and thanks so much for listening. Please join me in welcoming our next guest to Renovate and Build, Dean Barrett, the Business Development Manager at BARR Plastic. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Dean. Tell us about rainwater harvesting. Jim and I were reminiscing about growing up as kids and our grandparents having, our parents having buckets of rain that we'd water the garden with. But, I mean, it's come a long ways in rain harvesting.
Yes, rain harvesting in the past probably 20 years has been growing in North America. Most people don't realize that it's been done extensively on the west coast of Canada, in British Columbia, on the Gulf Islands, etc. It's becoming very big in drought areas all over North America.
Mm-hmm. And what areas specifically? If you could just share some of that with us.
Well, Texas has had a lot of drought in the last 10 years. California, okay. Various pockets throughout North America. But on the west coast, we have a lot of rain harvesting in the San Juan Islands, the Gulf Islands, Vancouver Island, and remote areas that don't have access to municipal water systems or good quality well water.
Exactly, or the wells dry up.
Yeah.
I know in a lot of areas that they have tough summers.
And that's how a lot of things start, right? They're adopting it by necessity, right? Like you said, in drought areas or where there's not infrastructure in place. So these kind of technologies and these kind of advancements happen, and then they get adopted because they make sense, right?
Yeah, and we're seeing it being adopted more out of necessity in a lot of cases, but also because a lot of people have a green mentality. They want to do their part to be more environmentally responsible.
Mm-hmm. And let's face it, in Vancouver, we got a lot. It's a huge resource, the water that comes out the sky, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, originally we're drinking rainwater in any event, whether it's in a reservoir or a river. Where we're getting it from is rainwater, so that's not really anything out of the ordinary to utilize rainwater. It's just more beneficial for us here because we have such a large amount of rainfall. It's easier for us to do it and adopt it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dean, share with us some, just the general kind of scope of advantages regarding rainwater harvesting.
Well, rainwater harvesting currently is being allowed for non-potable applications primarily, like toilet flushing and irrigation.
Irrigation's a big one because I find it crazy here that in such a rainy city that people still tie into the municipal water service to irrigate their yards, right? To me, that's like a no-brainer. Like people should be using harvested rainwater to irrigate their land, right?
Yeah, that's correct, because we're using actually treated drinking water to irrigate with and flush toilets.
Yeah.
Which in many parts of the world, people would think that's completely bizarre.
Yes.
But it's common practice in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just tell us how technologies have helped bring this into our everyday lives. It's no longer where I have to go out and get the bucket out of the barrel, but now you can have it quite an easy system.
Yes. There's a huge variety of product on the market. A lot of really great technology that's been developed in Europe and Australia that can pre-filter, store, and deliver your water. So it's very easy to integrate rain harvesting into a home. We need to implement dual plumbing inside the home so you can have city water going to your sinks and your bath, your shower, and so forth. But then we can use separate plumbing to toilets and laundry and irrigation. Mm-hmm. And separate the system so there's no chance of cross-contamination.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Dean, what do you think are some of the biggest objections or challenges you find from homeowners implementing this during their new home builds?
Well, the biggest challenge to homeowners is probably the ability to be able to do it. And due to the lack of guidelines and regulations that are currently in place, a lot of the plumbing inspectors in different municipalities don't have a lot of tools to work with. They don't know rain harvesting. It's not in the plumbing code to a great extent, so they don't really have the guidelines. So, but that's changing, thankfully. There's Canadian guidelines in place through CMHC. There's training taking place through the Canadian Association for Rainwater Management. So things are moving forward. They're starting to allow rainwater to be used for more things, such as above ground irrigation instead of subsurface irrigation, which was very restrictive and didn't make a lot of sense. So it's changing, and soon it'll be easier as the knowledge gets there and the plumbing code adapts.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next is, are you finding a lot more people opening their minds to this now? And, you know, once neighbors or relatives start in on and someone comes to say, this makes sense, it's easier to convince the next person to do this.
Actually, people are very open-minded. A lot of people want to do this. They just need the roadblocks removed.
Right.
And there's developers that want to do it. There's contractors, home builders that want to do it. And there's commercial businesses that want to do it. We're working on one right now in Abbotsford. A new poultry processing plant is installing a rain harvesting system in their plant.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next. How adaptable is this for commercial enterprises?
It's very adaptable, and the key driver for commercial enterprises is they want return on investment. So, anybody running a business is going to look at the cost of the system and the cost of water and calculate the payback. And currently our water's very inexpensive, but it's changing. Water rates we're going to see them continuously going up and up and up, but we're still a lot less expensive than other parts of North America where it's very expensive for water. There's a lot of places that are 3 or 4 and 5 times the cost of water here. So in those areas, you're seeing huge expenditure on commercial systems with 18-month ROI, and those guys are all over it.
Yeah.
When you said that, when I lived in Europe, in Germany, and I remember moving in as a country girl that could leave the tap running and thought it was going to go forever, moving to Europe, and I remember my landlady saying to me, remember, every time you flush this toilet, it's going to be a couple dollars down the toilet, and that's going to be your first lesson here on water expenses. I never thought that Canada we'd be starting to pay for our water like that after having a well that seemed endless, but like you said, this is something that's going to make sense financially for us.
Yeah. Well, typically in the Lower Mainland, you'll find average water rates in the neighborhood of about $1 per cubic meter. And in Europe, it's about €6 per cubic meter. So they're a lot more expensive for water over there than we are.
And how did you ever get into this business? Was this just something, once again, that you fell into, or did you plan and know that this was a very interesting field for you?
Well, we've been selling tanks since 1985. And since that time, we were selling tanks for rain harvesting right away. And it was mainly on the Gulf Islands where they were doing it out of necessity. But all we were selling was the tank. We didn't know anything else that was going on behind the scenes of how they were getting it from the roof to the tank, how they were filtering it, and mostly they weren't. But now the technology is there, all the tools there, the pre-filtration, the way to set up the system to maximize it so you're getting the cleanest water in and the cleanest water out of the system. So a much more usable system.
What would you say has been the most interesting projects for you?
I would say one of the most interesting projects we've done was the Abbotsford Center. We call it the Ice from Rain project, and it was the first professional ice surface in the world to use rainwater for a professional hockey team skating surface.
Fascinating.
And
was that hard to implement?
No, it actually was. It was a bit of a challenge because we had to figure out how to implement the system into an existing building. So it was a retrofit project, but everything lined up where we could collect the water from, the room where we could put the tanks, everything just worked out really, really well.
It would be an interesting documentary for somebody to follow through that process.
And it was a successful project. They believe they're saving a substantial amount on water. They believed it provided a better quality of ice, and also with collecting that mass of water in a hot boiler room, they're actually preheating the water, so they were saving actually more money on heating the water than they were on water savings. So
wow.
It worked out to be really good. Another unique project was a home builder in Abbotsford, Sonbuild Homes, just put in the largest residential rainwater harvesting system we've supplied to date in Canada. So for a single residential home in a subdivision, 15,000 gallons of storage.
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, we've been speaking with Dean Barrett of BARR Plastics. You can check out their website at barrplastics.com. That's BARR, B-A-R-R, plastics.com. Or you can see their link on our Facebook page at facebook.com /Renovate and Build. Thank you so much, Dean. We really appreciate your time and coming in today.
Well, thank you very much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Dean. Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Renovate and Build. We hope you enjoyed the show, and remember that the show is for you. So please email your questions or comments to radio@fairtradeworks.biz. That's radio@fairtradeworks.biz.
And thank you to our producer, Dwayne Bishop, for his help behind the scenes today. He's given us the thumbs up here.
And next week on Renovate and Build, we'll be catching up with the latest community happenings in Anmore, and that's a gem out there, and definitely a developing, growing community.
Yeah, good to hear from them. And the Cypress Hardwood crew will be back in the studio to talk about why subfloor prep is so important when you're installing your hardwood. And we're also going to be talking about North American and European hardwood flooring versus offshore products.
And of course, Megan Gary will drop by with the latest in garage floors on Product Face-Off.
Please continue to listen to CIL 650. Tom Lucas and Sherry Brown will be taking over the controls with Radio Real Estate. Enjoy your weekend.
Introducing a revolutionary new construction system. This is Renovate and Build with Jim and Sandra.